Welcome to CareCast, CareNet's podcast on family, faith, and life with Roland, CareNet's president and CEO, and Vincent DiCaro, CareNet's chief outreach officer. CareCast and more pro-abundant life commentary from CareNet can be found at care-net.org, where you can watch videos, download ebooks, and subscribe to the Abundant Life blog. Now let's listen in on what Roland and Vince have for us this week on CareCast.
Well, Roland, here we are in the podcast chamber.
The nerve center.
The nerve center, doing another podcast here.
The nerve of it.
Yes, with a nerve. What nerve we have? Yeah. I remember my one of my middle school teachers used to say, "You have more nerve than brains." She, of course, never said that to me, but
right.
No, actually, she probably did.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Yes.
Sounds like somebody would say to you.
Yeah. I know. It's too close to home. But our last episode of CareCast, Roland, was what we promised. Was part one of a 4-part series that we're doing.
That's right.
Answering the 4 biggest questions that CareNet gets about the pro-abundant life perspective. Yeah. So I'll just do a quick recap and you can kind of jump in here.
Yeah.
So CareNet, our mission and vision are built around this pro-abundant life perspective.
Yes.
That we need to save babies from abortion, build strong God-honoring families, and make disciples for Jesus Christ. And all of that is part of kind of creating what we call a pro-abundant life approach.
Yes.
To this work, right? So we work with fathers, we help people build marriages, we connect them to the local church for ongoing discipleship. And you need to do those things in order to actually save babies, but also to kind of break that cycle, save babies in the future. But of course, to really operate as a Christian ministry, those are the sorts of things that you need to be doing, right?
Yep.
And so rather than kind of functioning as a quote-unquote pro-life organization, we're functioning as a pro-abundant life, gospel-centered ministry.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
And again, if you didn't watch the first one, watch it because can't recap the whole thing.
Yeah. There's a lot in there.
There's a lot in there. It's rich.
It's rich. It was about 30 minutes. We usually try to keep our podcast to 10, 15 minutes. That one was 30.
30 minutes. I don't know how we needed a...
There was like...
We had somebody come in the middle like a marathon.
Right.
I remember, wasn't there somebody that splashed water in our face?
Throw water at us.
Yeah. We have people that do that.
Right, exactly.
We outsource that. We have to outsource that because it's too expensive to do internally.
No, it is. It's true. That's true. It's true. The make or buy. But
make or buy.
So we buy.
So we started with the central question.
Yeah, we started with the central question.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're watching these, remember that central question. Try to keep that in your head.
Why don't you just restate what that is?
Yeah, and we will put it up on the screen too. But the central question that if a woman came to you, right, and she's facing an unplanned pregnancy, right, at risk for abortion, and you could change everything except the fact that she's pregnant, what would you want for her?
Right.
And moreover, what do you think, as a Christian, God would want you to want for her?
Right, absolutely, yes.
That's the central question, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're solving for. That's the destination. I mean, that's the fact pattern. That's the problem that's being presented.
Right. And so that the first sort of question that we were answering that people have asked us about this pro-abundant life perspective is, and I'll read it. I'll read the exact wording because we were careful to make sure that we were representing the questions that we really get from folks, right? Doesn't the emphasis on quote-unquote other issues distract from the goal of saving unborn lives, right? And so you started off and basically said, well, if our goal as pro-life Christians is to answer that central question, how do we get there? Like, what's the solution that we need in order to get there? And then that's when we sort of built out this pro-abundant life perspective and what that means. So that's the recap of the first part. I'll actually read what the next 3 questions are, and then we're going to tackle the next one.
All right.
So the next 3 questions, aren't all of these added issues the work of the church and not the pro-life movement? Doesn't this create an unattainable workload that will tire out the people working in the pro-life movement? And finally, this all sounds good in theory, but what does this look like in real life? Okay? So today we're going to tackle, aren't all of these added issues, and again, in this context, the added issues are marriage, fatherhood, family, discipleship, the local church. Aren't all of those added issues the work of the church and not the pro-life movement? Yeah. So this is kind of a funny one because the answer is sort of yes and no. Right? And I think the way, I'm gonna tee you up here, Roland, because the way you answer that is sort of clever, which is that for the pro-life movement and the kind of the traditional approach to the pro-life movement, the church really isn't part of the pro-life movement. But that's actually exactly what the problem is, right? And so in order to believe that all this, quote, other stuff is the work of the church, you actually have to believe that the church is not and should not be part of the pro-life movement.
Yes.
However, our perspective, the pro-abundant life perspective, actually not only includes the church, but actually says that the church must be the leader of the pro-life movement.
Yes.
So why don't we...
Yeah, and that is an important distinction. Again, going back to the central question.
Yes.
Right, because the central question, the answer to that is that you're looking to form a disciple-making family.
That's right.
Right, and by the way, that's the call of the gospel.
Absolutely.
God's design for family, God's call to discipleship.
Yes.
Like we're called to make disciples, right?
Yes.
And therefore disciple-making families.
Right.
And look at things through a discipleship lens.
Yeah.
So that's why you say yes and no. I mean, if you frame the pro-life movement outside of the church,
Right.
then I guess you're right.
Right.
And I would say that that's generally how it's been framed.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
from my perspective, if you just think about it objectively, the pro-life, the term pro-life, right, has become so politicized, right, that it's actually designed to lead us to the polls.
That's right. That's right.
Right? That's what it is. So when we go to churches, right, we say, okay, we need your funding and we need your following.
Yeah,
right?
when pro-life organizations go to the church,
Sure.
we need
Funding and following.
Right,
So
right.
we need you to fund us, and then you need to follow us, but to the polls. Right? So the objective of the pro-life movement often, in terms of how it's framed, it's a political thing. And that's why with so many Christians, if you ask them if they're pro-life and they say yes, and you say, well, prove it, they'll tell you who they voted for.
Right.
What does that tell you? That they see it primarily through a political lens.
Right. And accordingly, the church sort of has a limited role in that.
Exactly, because that's not the call of the church.
Right.
What is the call of the church? Right? To live out the Great Commandment, to fulfill the Great Commission.
Right.
Those are not things that are
part of a political framework.
Right? So the pro-life framework is designed to lead you to the polls, which is why, frankly, some of the biggest organizations in the pro-life movement are political advocacy organizations, and there's a role for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't get it twisted.
Nothing wrong with anything.
Nothing wrong with that, right? But the role of the church is actually not that. The role of the church is to make disciples. So you can see it's a Venn diagram that seems to not overlap fully.
Right.
So our position, with a pro-abundant life perspective, based on John 10:10, which is Jesus' why statement, is saying, no, actually, the church is supposed to be leading this movement. It's not supposed to be funding and following. It's supposed to be leading the movement, because the objective of the pro-abundant life perspective is to lead you to the cross. The objective of a pro-life perspective is to lead you to the polls.
That's right. Absolutely.
And by the way, and this is where a lot of the problem comes in, even with the polls. And this is what we're seeing. For example, if you look at the state referendums that have flipped over the years, and you and I have looked at the crosstabs and the exit polls and all of that, the margin of difference in so many of those elections is who? Christians.
Right.
Who profess to be pro-choice.
Right. Yep. Christians voting on the pro-choice side of this.
Exactly. Who went to the polls but didn't go to the cross.
Right.
So
they didn't bring their cross perspective to the polls.
Didn't bring their cross perspective to the polls. And by the way, that's how the pro-life perspective has been framed so often, because that's the role of political advocacy. That's why I like to use word pictures here, because it's about exchanging the podium for the pulpit.
That's right.
Right? So the podium with a political perspective has been leading the movement, not the pulpit.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
And that's a pro-life perspective, right? Where the podium leads to the polls, right? Where the pulpit leads you to the cross.
That's right.
So it is two very, very different things. Now, you say,
indeed.
okay, Roland, well then, why is that better?
Right.
Well, why is that better? Well, I mean, just think about in the political narrative, if Christians went to the polls with the perspective of a Imago Dei, that this child is created in the image of God, and the circumstances of a child's conception and birth should not determine its humanity and worth, they'll vote differently.
Yeah, that's right.
So actually, you accomplish your political objectives if people are followers of Christ and they take that perspective to the polls.
That's right. Absolutely.
So we actually hurt ourselves by not framing it in the church.
Right.
Through this narrative.
Right. In other words, not framing it as a pro-abundant life, from a pro-abundant life perspective that includes the church as the leader of the pro-life movement, not as somebody who's sort of on the outside looking in. Well, so there's like this pro-life movement over here, and then there's the church over there.
Yes.
And, like you said, we need funding, we need following, but we don't necessarily need you doing or leading.
We don't need you leading.
Yeah.
And so practically, then why does that make a difference? Well, it makes a difference because if you look at the pro-abundant life perspective, it's God's design for family,
Right.
and God's call to discipleship.
Yep.
Well, who is the keeper of God's design for family? Not the podium.
Right. Yeah.
We don't even know what family is.
Right.
We don't even know what men are or women are. Like,
Right,
we're,
right.
we're confused about a whole bunch of stuff. Right at the podium.
It's toe up from the flow up.
That's right.
Yes.
That's so funny. I said that earlier. Now it's become your thing.
I know. I
You
just
love
yeah.
that.
It just rolls off the tongue.
But it's true.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a perspective. Like, the podium doesn't have a perspective on the family. It's all over the place in terms of what.
Absolutely.
And so the role of the podium is not God's design for family. The church has that, right, which is reflected in the first family, right, that we talk about, which is the birth of Christ. And the podium doesn't have God's call to discipleship.
No, absolutely not.
Not part of it.
No.
So you actually, by not framing it in a pro-abundant life way, you lose the power. I always tell people, look, you lose the pews, you lose the polls. And if you lose the pastors, you lose the pews. And we have focused so much of our attention, right, that we've actually lost the pews in many cases. And you were talking about that. You can kind of mention some of that in terms of like the data, in terms of the number of Christians that have abortions.
Yeah. I mean, what our data has showed us is that, we did those national surveys. I think we mentioned those in the last episode as well, that about 4 out of 10 women who had an abortion were attending church at least once a month at the time of their first abortion. And about 50%, literally half, of men who were involved in an abortion were attending church regularly at the time of that abortion. And so clearly there's a problem of abortion inside the church, among church-going Christians.
Yes.
Like, these are regular churchgoers, right? Not just people who call themselves Christians, but people who are regularly going to church are having abortions.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So going back to the kind of the question here about like these added issues, are they the work of the church? Well, they're the work of Christians, right? So in my view, as a Christian, you don't say, well, I'm pro-life and I put that over here, and then I'm a Christian over here. We're supposed to be applying a Christian perspective to this work. That's so right. In our mind, there's not a dichotomy between the church and, quote, pro-life in that context.
Right.
No. The church is leading that.
Yes.
It brings it together,
right.
And it also keeps it solid.
Yes.
That's like, because that's how we get to a 15-week ban and those kinds of things that allow 96% of abortions. Why? Because the podium's leading, and the podium needs to cut a deal.
Right. That's right.
But if the pulpit was leading, it would define the issue based on Imago Dei. Right. That the circumstances of a child's conception and birth should not determine its humanity and worth.
For sure. And just, kind of to get down to a couple, more nitty-gritty sort of points is that if the purpose here is to answer this central question, right? If the purpose of the quote-unquote pro-life movement is to answer that central question, right? If you could change everything about her situation, which then, of course, hopefully would lead folks to a pro-abundant life perspective. Okay, so if that's what we're shooting for, what we've often tried to explain to folks is that the church, Christ's church, is the only institution that is structurally capable and ideologically aligned to get you to that destination.
Absolutely.
Right? And you kind of said that around the difference between the podium and the pulpit kind of leading this. But without the pulpit leading this, you can't get to that. You can't answer the central question.
You can't.
Without the church. And that's why, again, we're like, the church actually needs to be leading the pro-life movement.
Yes.
So the question itself of, isn't this stuff outside of the pro-life movement? Isn't this like the work of the church? We're like, yeah, because the church needs to be leading the pro-life movement.
Exactly.
So again, you would have to believe in order to ask that question, even just to ask the question, you would have to believe that the church is not part of the pro-life movement.
Absolutely.
Right.
And honestly, I've been to some pro-life events.
Right.
And there's no church people there.
No, not a single pastor, church leader, nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Why?
In fact, it's hard even for sort of care-based ministries to make their way into a lot of pro-life events. Because it's become so dominated by sort of a political advocacy perspective that it's, how do you get that church, that podium, that pulpit perspective into that? It's tough.
But the practical, when you look at it in terms of the boots of the ground, and that's the work that we're in. Like CareNet is a ministry of 1,300 affiliated pregnancy centers. I think we have 68, mobile units out there now with the integration of ICU Mobile into the ministry. Yeah. So we're knee to knee with these folks that are facing pregnancy decisions
every day.
And what we know is that life decisions need life support.
That's right. Absolutely.
And it's not just support from conception to birth,
right,
but ongoing.
That's right.
Ongoing.
Because you make the really good point that she's not just thinking about how am I going to get from now when I found out I'm pregnant to the day that I give birth to this child. She's not just thinking about that period of time. She's thinking about what am I going to do for the next 18 years after that.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. She's making that decision from conception to birth based on the support she has after birth. So I always tell people, this issue is about 9 months and 1 second.
Yeah.
And if she can't figure that out, that missing support piece, then she's much more likely to have the abortion. Now, pregnancy centers have a role to play there. Absolutely.
Yes.
Can be fantastic in terms of providing, and the ministries that we work with, I mean, they're just amazing at providing that support from conception to birth and maybe a little bit further. But the reality is, if you walk into a pregnancy center with a 10-year-old, unless they wear diapers and drink formula, ain't much we can do for you.
That's right, yeah.
So that's where she's thinking, well, so who has the role there? How do you get that support? Well, that's why we talk about fathers and the role that they play, right? And we mentioned that before. 87% of the women have abortions are unmarried, so the role of father is critical. But if that guy's not there, right, if the father is not there, if he's unwilling and unable, right, to step up into that role, who has that call? And that's why I always...
The church.
The church. Yeah. So, again, if you create this dichotomy that the pro-life movement's here and the church is there, you never can reconcile James 1:27 that says, religion that God our Father finds is pure and faultless, that we care for the orphans and widows, right, in their distress, right? In other words, orphans and widows, right? That's been central from the Old Testament to the New Testament as this vulnerable population.
That's right.
That... It's a definition of your righteousness, if you will.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. When that was written, right, what was an orphan and what was a widow? An orphan was a child without a father, and a widow was typically a mother without a husband.
That's right.
Right? Why? Because that husband and father was dead. And the church was to step into that role and provide support.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
Well, today... Too often, the husband and father may say to the mother and child, proverbial husband and father may say to the mother and child, you're dead to me. So we end up with single mothers and children, right? Well, who has the responsibility based on James 1:27 to step into that gap? The church, the local church.
Right. Now, some people might be saying, well, surely if a couple or a woman goes to a pregnancy center and gets support from the people at the pregnancy center, those are church-going Christians that are providing her with that support at the pregnancy center, and surely they're connecting that client to a local church. You wouldn't be, but one would be shocked by how often you've heard that that's not actually happening.
Well, and that's the big challenge for pregnancy centers, right? Because we know our pregnancy centers want to do that, but if the church doesn't see themselves as part of this other than providing following and funding,
that's right,
then when that pregnancy center, and again, I've talked to lots of them who really desperately want to do this, when they want to move a client from the pregnancy center to the church for ongoing support and discipleship, the church is saying, well, that's not our role.
Right.
Like they're not thinking, unless you reframe this properly as, no, this woman needs to become a disciple of Jesus Christ. The pregnancy center can do evangelism, right, which leads to conversion, but the pregnancy center cannot do discipleship because it's a long-term relationship, right? Matthew 28:19 says what? To teach them to obey all that I've taught you. That can't happen in 9 months at a pregnancy center. That's the role. So the pregnancy center has this amazing role of evangelism, sharing the gospel, hopefully having a conversion conversation, and we know that's a central part of what the amazing pregnancy centers that are connected to CareNet are doing. They are unashamed of sharing the gospel, trying to have that gospel conversation, but they need to be able to transition those folks to the church for ongoing support and discipleship. Life decisions need life support.
And if the church doesn't see itself as being part of the pro-life movement, that's going to become much more difficult to do.
And exactly. And part of the reason that's happened is because it's been created because the pro-life movement is political.
That's right.
right? So we have all of these other areas where vulnerable people get support. Water for the thirsty, food for the hungry, clothes for the naked, homes for the homeless, where churches see that, oh yeah, that's absolutely part of what? Living out the Great Commandment to fulfill the Great Commission. But compassion for the pregnant, wait a minute, that's a political thing, right? That's what we always talk about. Like, I've never heard a pastor say, listen, I'm not going to preach about, I'm not going to preach about poverty because politicians are talking about homelessness, and politicians they're talking about all these issues. But pastors never say, I ain't preaching about that. Right. That's too controversial. I'm not going to touch that because that's a political issue. But then you come to the life issue, they say, oh, well, that's a political issue. So that's impacted the way that churches, the local church views the life issue because, again, the pro-life perspective has been ideally designed to lead people to the polls, right? Both the polls in terms of the person sitting in the pews, and a pro-abundant life perspective is designed to lead you to the cross. In other words, to view the life issue through that lens, through a biblical lens before you go to the polls, but also then you view it as a discipleship. So it's not just about voting, it's about seeing someone facing a pregnancy decision and saying, you know what? That person needs to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. The child growing inside of her needs to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. The guy who got her pregnant needs to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. That's right. You don't have to be as a pro-life person, you don't have to think that way at all. You just have to think about, oh, I need to go to this march. I need to vote for this. I need to sign this referendum. That's right. That's all I'm pro-life. But if you're pro-abundant life, there's a challenge. No. Those things are important. You need to do those things. But also, you need to be making a disciple of Jesus Christ, of this woman who's coming to you facing a pregnancy decision, this man who's coming to you who's supporting whatever perspective, and that child that is growing there. You see what I'm saying? Absolutely. So by creating the dichotomy, you actually save less lives.
Absolutely.
You actually save less lives if you make this compartmentalized. So the pro-life movement's over here and the church is over there, and we just meet every now and then for some followers, maybe some volunteers for something, and a cash exchange, as opposed to what we do.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, there's just in terms of the sheer numbers, there's about 3,000 pregnancy centers in the country, but there's about 350,000 churches.
Yes.
So can you imagine the power that would have if churches consider themselves to be part of the pro-abundant life movement, right?
And leading it.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at, then they would be looking at both within the church and outside the church, because we have people in the church, right, who are facing pregnancy decisions and who are looking at abortion as an alternative. Well, if your church doesn't have a ministry on-ramp, right, then Planned Parenthood or abortion pill can look like a compassionate alternative to the church. That's right. Yep. So you need to have a ministry on-ramp in the church, and that's our Making Life Disciples program for trying to get small groups together to see themselves as ministers for people who are facing pregnancy decisions inside the church, but also to receive clients from pregnancy centers, right? Yes. Into the church for ongoing support and discipleship.
So makinglifedisciples.com is a website where you can learn about that program, and actually you can watch the first session of that it's a small group study. You can watch the first session for free with the workbook, and then kind of make a decision from there in terms of what you want to do with that.
Yeah. Well, again, a great illustration. A pregnancy center is like a speedboat, like a small speedboat, right? And it's out there, and it's looking for people in need. And it sees someone over there, oh, gosh, that person's in need, right? Facing a pregnancy decision. So they go over to them, get them on the boat, love them up, dry them off. Yeah. Oh, there's another one. Oh, get them on the boat, love them up, dry them off. Oh, get them on the boat, love them up, dry them off. Well, after a while, the boat
gets full pretty fast.
It gets full.
Yeah.
So what do I do with these people?
Right.
I guess I put them back in the water.
That's right.
What choice do I have? Right? And I call that the 18-18 rule, that we see the woman, right, who's had a pregnancy decision, we see her back again at the pregnancy center, or frankly at an abortion clinic, with a new pregnancy and a new guy. We see her daughter in 18 years, or her son got pregnant in 18 years. That's the reality. Well, what's supposed to happen? See, life decisions need life support. The little boat, the little speedboat the pregnancy center has, right, it only has so many of those life rings, so many of those buoys that it carries. It has a few of them. Right, and it brings them on. But what's supposed to be happening? And this is the disconnect when you view this issue, in my view, through a pro-life lens in terms of how it's been characterized versus pro-abundant life lens. Because what's supposed to happen is the small boat is supposed to be connected to the big boat.
That's right.
which is the local church.
That's right.
And so the pregnancy center is supposed to
We have a great graphic that will go up on screen.
Yeah,
on this.
to show that. And the small boat's supposed to go to the big boat, and then clients are supposed to go off of the small boat onto the big boat. Why? Because the big boat has lots and lots and lots of these life rings that address the reason why women have abortions to begin with, and why men support abortion. She may not have a place to live.
Right.
Okay, you got a whole congregation there. Got an extra room. Guy doesn't have a job. Okay, got a business. Give him a chance, right? They're living together. They've never even seen what a Christian marriage looks like. We have all these couples in the church married for decades. Will you mentor this young couple? Dude's running away from fatherhood because he never had a dad. You've been a father for years and years. Will you walk alongside him? That's not something that a pregnancy center can do long term.
Right, that's right.
So when you disconnect the issue from the church, that's what you miss.
Right. And then you save fewer lives.
And then you save fewer lives because life decisions need life support.
Right. And that's, again, going back to the theme of our series here, answering these questions about the pro-abundant life movement. That first big question is, doesn't focusing on these, quote, other issues actually distract from the goal of actually saving lives from abortion? And again, we're arguing that you have to actually do these things in order to save lives.
Those other issues are actually what saved the lives.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, again, I'll use my own personal story here to just put a fine point on this, right? So when my wife got pregnant when we were in college, I was 19, she was 19. We got pregnant. She was encouraged to have an abortion, right? She had all the missing support dynamics that everybody would think about. And when the nurse who administered the pregnancy test encouraged her to abort, I mean, I'm sure that's what spins around her, and certainly was what was spinning around in the nurse's head. Like, how's this young lady going to graduate from Princeton with a baby? Right? What does she want to be? A doctor? How's she going to become a doctor with a baby? How's that going to happen? Right? She and that nurse knew life decisions need life support. She don't have the life support to support the life decision. Right, in her mind. Right. But when my wife knew, actually, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Right? The father of the baby is going to be involved. Right? All those different things, and the people that would come alongside us to support that life decision. So these things, which someone might cast as other issues, they're actually the secret sauce. Yeah. They're the secret sauce of what actually leads to a life decision. You don't have to believe me. Just look at Guttmacher's data on why women have abortions. It's all missing support. I want to be able to finish my college career. I don't have the financial resources. I don't have support from the guy. All these things, all these, quote, other issues are the reasons why she's having an abortion, right? So they're not other issues. They're actually the issue. And when you solve those things, those are the life rings that get thrown out that she grabs onto to get her to the pregnancy center, right, to some degree, and then moves her to the local church that they can provide all of that support. Life decisions need life support.
That's right.
But that only happens, in my view, if you view this issue through a pro-abundant life lens.
With the church as the leader.
With the church as a leader, and the destination being discipleship.
Right, that's right.
The destination is discipleship as opposed to a typical pro-life perspective where the destination is the next election.
Right. Or just simply, quote unquote, saving the baby, which again, I don't know how you sort of do all that without, But
you save more babies with this perspective.
That's right, absolutely.
That's the central point that I guess we're trying to make.
Yes.
And practical common sense bears that out. I've lived that, and we see it every single day in these amazing pregnancy centers that are part of CareNet's network. They understand that, and that's why they're supporting Making Life Disciples, trying to get their churches to not just give them financial support and all that kind of stuff, but also to disciple their clients, so as they share the gospel and hopefully have a conversion experience, that they can transition to their clients to the church for ongoing support and discipleship to address, quote, the other issues that are leading her to think that abortion is her only option.
That's right. And another important website that we'll put up on the screen as well is abortionhealing.org. Which is about our abortion recovery and care program. In fact, actually, the books are right there. Forgiven and Set Free, which is a Bible study for women seeking healing after abortion, and Reclaiming Fatherhood, a Bible study for men seeking healing after abortion. That's another way that the church can really become engaged in this issue, and because there's people sitting in their pews every Sunday who have this in their past and are maybe reluctant to become involved in pro-life ministry, or in our case, pro-abundant life ministry, because they have this wound in their past that they haven't really dealt with.
That's right.
These are programs that churches can run that can help people work through those issues, and those are the people who often become the greatest advocates for life in your church. And so abortionhealing.org. So,
Yep.
So Roland, that is 2 of 4.
Two of 4. So we repeat that question again that we just addressed.
So we just addressed, aren't all of these added issues the work of the church and not the pro-life movement? So we covered that. So in our next episode, which will be 3 of 4, we'll cover, doesn't this create an unattainable workload that will tire out the people working in the pro-abundant life movement in our case?
Yeah.
But yeah, the question is kind of framed around, okay, if the pro-life movement needs to, quote, do all this other stuff, isn't that just an unattainable workload that no one can possibly do? And so we will answer that next.
Yes, we will.
All right. Thank you, Roland.
Yep.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of CareCast. For more pro-abundant life commentary and practical resources, please visit care-net.org. There you can subscribe to the Abundant Life blog, giving you access to videos, ebooks, podcasts, and other resources to help turn your pro-life passion into pro-abundant life action. Until next time, we pray that God blesses you and yours daily.